I'm Marikay Shellman, member of National Federation of Business and Professional Women's Environment and Sustainable Development Committee, and a strong advocate for bringing back the pollinators. As an artist and a rancher, on my 40 acres, I graze cattle and have an apple orchard and the beginnings of a lavender field. The Western monarch butterflies are close to extinction. Remember those beautiful orange butterflies many of us grew up chasing as kids? Their population has declined by 99.9%. The Eastern monarch population has dropped by over 80%. These alarming declines are due to the overuse of pesticides throughout North America and to the loss of habitat, specifically native milkweed plants. Several years ago, on a beautiful spring day, while cleaning out my irrigation ditches, my apple trees in full bloom, I noticed the most terrifying sound: no bees. I'd heard about the decline of the bee population, but until that moment, I did not realize that it really did involve me. I immediately called a friend who was keeping bees, and he brought me 2 hives at 5:30 the next morning, saving my apple crop. I became fascinated with those little pollinators, and the 2 hives grew into 5, becoming necessary with grandkids running around to move the hives away from the yard to my pond area surrounded by trees. Last summer, despite 3 no spraying, bees at work signs by my pond, our mosquito control heavily sprayed pesticides to eliminate mosquitoes, killing my honeybee hives. I called almost every local and state and agriculture department and learned that mosquito control in the state of Colorado has a constitutional right to spray pesticides for mosquito control. Alarming insect pollinator declines due to habitat loss, climate change, pesticides, pollution, and lack of biodiversity are happening at a rapid rate. 40% of the world's insect species face extinction. 1 in every mouthfuls of food we consume depends upon pollinators. $18 to $27 billion annually of crops in the United States depend upon pollinators. If you think, as I did, that pollinators are just honeybees, that is not correct. There are 3,600 native bee species in the United States and Canada alone, 90% of which are solitary bees, stingless and not aggressive, and many are tiny. They are our pollinators. Honeybees are not endangered because they are managed. What are disappearing at a frightening rate are bumblebees, butterflies, water insects, beetles, and fireflies. Remember catching those wonderful little jewels of the night and putting them into jars to light up on summer nights? Here's another alarming fact. For those of you who enjoy a cup of coffee, climate change could reduce global coffee production by half by 2050. Deforestation for agriculture, whether it be coffee or cattle, results in massive flooding, mudslides, pollution. Forests are our carbon sinks. Upsetting stuff. What can you do? Not everyone has land or even a yard. What can you do if you live in an apartment in New York City? How can you help with climate change? Buy from responsible producers. Look for certifications such as Rainforest Alliance, a tree frog sticker on coffee and bananas. There are amazing regenerative projects ongoing globally. Regenerative, meaning creating healthy and aggregate soil, growing soil, rather than the conventional agriculture that degrades soil through the use of glyphosate and tillage and monocrops. Massive fields of corn and soybean grown to feed animals in concentrated animal feeding operations called CAFOs. 80% of antibiotics produced are used on livestock. If you choose to eat meat, you don't have to quit eating meat. You just need to eat better meat. Look for grass-fed meat and milk products. Look for organic produce. More than 1 billion pounds of pesticides are used yearly in the United States. I'd always heard that exposure to glyphosate, better known as Roundup, could cause cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for one. I just learned that recent studies show exposure to pesticides increase the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. I love this quote from Rodale Institute. People are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. In our quest for cheap foods through conventional agriculture, we have totally lost sight of the condition of the land. This is causing deforestation, inhumane treatment of animals, CAFOs, and unfair wages at the farm level, affecting many women, as we well know. Whether you live in an apartment or on a farm or somewhere in between, compost. Compost disposed into a landfill creates methane, which is 85 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than CO2. With every 1% increase in soil organic matter, composted soil, 20,000 gallons of water can be infiltrated, absorbed by soil, preventing runoff, floods, and droughts. Another way you can make a difference, with spring here and flowers beckoning, make sure when you purchase a potted plant or a 6-pack of vegetable that they are growing using pollinator-friendly practices. No pesticides. Avoid those double flowering varieties because pollinators can't access the pollen or nectar from these beautiful blooms. And if you're purchasing seeds, make sure you're buying non-GMO seeds. These genetically modified organisms have been engineered to withstand the application of pesticides, such as glyphosate, creating Roundup-ready crops. If you do have a lawn, take it from Martha Stewart. Care for it organically. Do not use synthetic fertilizers. Homeowners use 75% more Roundup than the agricultural industry, and this glyphosate runs off into our waterways. You only need a thin layer of compost, 1/4 an inch or so, on your lawn every spring, having the benefit of saving water. Water deeply, but only weekly. Raise your mower to the highest height, 3 to 4 inches, and mow only every other week, which also saves water. Choose native species and perennials when possible. Reimagine weeds as wildflowers. You can get rid of all the weeds in your garden by renaming them wildflowers. They are indeed resources for many native insects. Untidy is habitat for many insects, and the single most important thing all of us can do is create habitat for pollinators. Provide flowering, pesticide-free plants provide shelter and nesting sites, overwintering sites by leaving stems in undisturbed areas, puddles, stumps, logs. Tolerate some damage to your plant, as that means beneficial insects are at work. Post a pollinator habitat sign to educate your neighbors and explain your manicured lawn. I'm sorry, your unmanicured lawn. We can all be part of the solution.